Great. Hi, everybody. I'm Jon Taylor. I'm a therapist outside of Salt Lake City, Utah. I'm really glad to hear that people are taking these tools and using them immediately because I do not think that relationships are a theoretical thing. It's not about getting it right in your head and then doing it. It's about doing it and then learning from it and getting better the more you do. Um, so, yeah. So today we're going to talk about another component that I would say is a real make or break component in our relationship, and that's the degree to which we feel known by our partner and the degree to which we know our partner. The Gottmans, who have trained under for a lot of my marital work training, they would call this love maps. So it's essentially knowing your partner's inner world, their likes, their dislikes. It gets as basic as likes and dislikes. It goes as deep as like things they fear the most. So it's knowing a person inside and out. For those of you who have had the opportunity to seek out a therapist or to seek out a 12-step group or some kind of support like that in your recovery, you have probably run into the feeling of what it feels like to be really well known by that person in a short amount of time, and the feeling that this person, no matter how hard they try, they will not understand you, they will not know you. That feeling that we get when we're well known and the trust that comes along with that, or the willingness to be open that comes along with that, that's huge when you think about it in relationships. So having a skill or having strong, healthy love maps in your relationship, that's what really contributes to that feeling of being known, being knowable, and being able to know your partner. One of the benefits to working on love maps or having that be a strong part of your relationship is that it's very hard to hurt somebody that you know, especially intentionally. I think accidents happen all the time. I think thoughtlessness happens all the time, but to intentionally hurt somebody that you know really, really well, that's a really hard thing to do. So having our internal world known, our likes, our dislikes, our little nuances, it can help provide a level of safety and security in your relationships because it keeps you human to your partner. So one of the things that it's really important to look at when it comes to being known is, number one, how easy is it to get to know you? I did some workshops for myself last summer about this time, and I was given a lot of consistent feedback that I did not have an approachable face. People would tell me your face is too hard, you scowl too much. It's a joke on my mom's side of the family. Her maiden name is Burnham, and we call it the Burnham scowl. My oldest, who's 9 now, when he was a newborn baby, I was getting my undergraduate degree, and he was born right before graduation, and I brought him to like a gathering with professors and other students, and my wife was there too. It was like a reception for our families, and we had him in his little carrier, and there was a blanket over the top, and one of my professors says, "Oh, can I peek in on him?" And she said, "Yeah." So she pulls it open and she says, "Oh my goodness, he has his daddy's scowl." And it's true. Like, I've heard this my whole life, that my face is not approachable. And something that I've had to work on is getting my face to align with my heart. I really do like people. I like having close relationships. I think it's exciting to get to know people. But my exterior did not match that desire. So people felt really standoffish with me. They felt really separate from me. And that's something to look at when it comes to being known by a partner is, am I very knowable? Do I let myself open up? Can I be relaxed enough to talk about some of the surface things? Because as much as that may drive us crazy, if that's the entire substance of a relationship, it also plays a really important role in getting to know somebody. We can't dive deep and stay deep all the time. So we have to have ways to connect on the surface as well as deeper down. This also communicates our interests in a way that these interests can become common interests. So Tammy, if you don't mind me using you just for a little example, Tammy shared before that her and her husband dance. They do ballroom dancing.
Taking ballroom dance lessons, yes.
I'm guessing that was not you both woke up one day and said, "Oh my gosh, we should do ballroom dancing," right?
He found a Groupon and said, "I think we should do this." And I was like, okay. So
there you go. There's a really good example of how building love maps works. So this, like, I'm on Groupon, I'm looking through and I find this interesting thing and I tell my partner I found this interesting thing, and all of a sudden we're down on this, we're we're down this track of pursuing a new interest for ourselves. Getting to know somebody's internal world is as simple as that. What did you do today? What did you have for lunch? What are you looking forward to? Those kind of really simple questions communicate a lot of interest, and they provide opportunities for us to gather those little bits of information that we then build our internal picture on. And I think when we have a more accurate, diverse internal picture of another person, we can make better guesses at how to be good in a relationship with them. Working on our love maps also forces us to stop living parallel lives. A lot of people feel like their relationships are great because I show up, I do my thing, they show up, they do their thing, and we never step on each other's toes. Which, if you're going for the ships passing in the night phenomenon, that is a great relationship. Someone who may be more anxiously and avoidantly attached, that's probably the best case scenario for them. But if you really want to work on a strong relationship means we intersect. It means sometimes we have an opportunity to step on each other's toes, and asking questions of interest and answering questions of interest in a helpful way forces us to stop doing this parallel thing, and it makes us intersect. Early on in a relationship, a lot of the payoff and the satisfaction comes from the risks we're taking with each other all the time and not knowing it. You may not recognize this, but when somebody gets to know your favorite kind of music, that could be a deal breaker for them. For example, someone might say, I don't understand how anyone could like country music. I don't understand how anyone could like rap music. This conversation's over. That can happen. And the reason why the beginning of relationships can feel so good is all these little risks we're taking. This is my favorite food. This is what I want to do. They're usually rewarded with a, yeah, I want that too. Or that's so interesting. Let me know more. And we can kid ourselves later on in relationships. We can kid ourselves by saying, I know everything there is to know about this person. There's nothing new under the sun. So we stop asking those good questions. And just like in our example with Tammy, if that were not a regular part of their relationship, you would never know that there was this new thing that both of you could totally get on board with, and it could, be another exciting part of your relationship. This is the basic quality of friendships too. And friendship is really the foundation, I would say, of a intimate relationship, be that with a romantic partner, be that with a child, if you're a parent, a coworker who you work closely with. This skill of making small talk and not just having it be about the weather, but small talk about the person, that really contributes to this feeling of being known and being appreciated. Now, when we do this, for some people, this can feel like drudgery to memorize all these little facts. And the way that it happens naturally is not drudgery. It's that simple, like, oh, what you said or what you did or where I met you, like that piques some interest in me. So I'm going to pursue that curiosity and get to know you more. So when we get to know our partner, we have to make sure that it's fun, because otherwise, if this becomes monotony, if this becomes work, we're not going to do it. It feels like such a little thing that it has to have fun as a reward. There's actually there's some resources for this that I believe are free. If you go to your app store and you search for Gottman, Gottman, I think the first app that comes up is Card Decks. And there's lots of, they used to actually, I have some in my desk right here. They used to actually print these hard copy decks, and this one has love maps and open-ended questions. And you would draw a card and it would say something like, what did your partner wear on your first date? And you would have to answer the question with your partner there present. And then if they got it right, the partner's job was to praise them and give more information. If they got it wrong, the partner's job was to gently correct, to update the love map. So those love map questions and those open-ended questions, those can provide some really great starting points for conversation, some really great starting points for exploring and getting to know your partner. Just as a word of warning, there are other decks in that app. Some of them have to do with a sexual relationship. So if you're healing from any kind of betrayal trauma, or you're in active addiction and your relationship is not in the place to be talking about the quality of your sex life and habits and things like that, don't go to those other decks. I've worked with too many couples who have thought, we're ready for this, let's go there, and they end up really hurting each other. So stick to the love maps and the open-ended questions to begin with. They also have a version of this, or they used to in the app. You could get love maps for kids.
Oh, cute.
Yeah, and these are things that in my relationships, I'll use these questions sometimes, or just as a one-off. Like I'll send a text and ask about, like, it doesn't have to be this face-to-face thing. And I think this is a really valuable skill. One of the places that we start learning this in individual recovery. Think about any of your long-term recovery relationships. Are they all business? Or was there this friendship quality that started to develop after that? Maybe when you first met your sponsor, if you're working on active addiction, maybe you met your sponsor and you picked the sternest, most serious person in the world because you needed because you needed somebody to help you toe the line. I would imagine if you continue to work with that person for any amount of time, that relationship wasn't just about being stern and having you toe the line, but there's also some of these qualities that developed. You learned about a softer side of them. They learned about a more vulnerable human side of you. And I would say that this is really the first step into the skill set that helps our relationships really last. A lot of people stick in relationships because there's a task to accomplish. This kind of love maps and being known and knowing your partner, this is really the stuff that makes us want to be together. Which, as I look at all of my long-term relationships, yes, accomplishing tasks is great, but what I really want is to want to be with that person and to know that they want to be with me too. And this is a really simple way that we start doing that. So I would encourage you to check out the app. You can even Google these questions. I think Gottman Love Map questions, and you can come up with all the different questions and go and have fun with it. Experiment with it. Get to know the people in your circle in a different way, and just see what that does to the qualities of your relationships.
Yes, I think you can build love maps. I'm going to put the link in the chat.
Great.
Too, so that you can copy and paste this too. So try that. I've typed a few things in the chat feature for you. I think it's so interesting. I was thinking too, we've been married a long time, and it would be really easy to get complacent in that and think that we know each other. But one of the things I was thinking about while you were talking is that we've continued to change and evolve. And so some of the things that if I, like when you're talking about, and you can get updated information, it's like, okay, you got that one. That isn't correct. Here's the updated information. But I would hope that I would continue to grow and change. My favorite color is still red. That's not going to change. But there's a lot of other things that have continued to change. I think one of the things that's been helpful for me. We have a lot of conversation. It's like, well, what do you think about that? And having that discussion. And there's a lot of times I go, wow, I hadn't thought of it in that way, and that's useful information. And whether it's, Jeff and I, or it's friendships or whatever, I have so many friends that are very different from me, and I really appreciate that because I want to get to know them, and it's helpful for me to, to have that perspective, have different perspectives, on things and understand where they're coming from. I'm definitely gonna look up the love map for kids because I'm thinking, I'm a grandma, so it's like one of those, like I can text my grandkids and like I can stay involved with them and not have it be the good, sometimes you get the, you send a text or whatever and it's like the shortest answer possible. So like, I was like, that's cool. I think that'll be fun to, kind of play with from that standpoint too. But, I was thinking it's really easy to, because I was thinking, I wonder how many people really know me, and I think it's easy for me to show, and I think we always have to do that. We have to show the safe, like this, I'm willing to share, with lots of people. I'm on these, for goodness sakes, so I'm willing to share this, and then, there's the circle gets smaller of people that I share, that get to know more about, me and who I'm really willing to be, more transparent with. That said, I learned, this was a couple of years ago, about being congruent, because one of the things I fell into was they would see this part of me, but it would be a detached piece from this part of me that from me, really. It's like I'd have different versions of me. And I worked really hard at being a congruent person. So even if I only show you this much, it's still the true me.
Yeah.
And that was really helpful. Well, it was helpful for me to not feel disjointed, but it was also, I think, I want it to be that, if I'm in a relationship, even if it's more superficial, you can like me or not, but it's the true me that, you're getting to see. So this is great stuff though.
Yeah. Yeah. And the overall skill here is it teaches us to take our interactions from kind of the known. Like I think of that old TV lawyer adage, you never ask a question you don't already know the answer to. I think a lot of times we play it that safe in our relationships. And this really takes it from that, like, I'm taking this from a known course into an open end. Like, I don't know where this is going to go. And that ability to sit with someone in curiosity or to be explored and to be observed with a curious partner, that really works on a relationship in so many different levels. And you may be going through your head right now and thinking of people that you would want to do this with and people that you absolutely wouldn't want to do this with. And that's good, because there's going to be some people that we don't want to sit down and just freely associate and freely explore with. Again, as with most of these relationship skills, there's a basic level of safety and a basic level of desire to be in the relationship that makes this used. And on the other hand, I think this is a good way to gauge our relationship and to gauge how we really feel about it. Would I want this person to know what my favorite color is? Would I want this person to know what my most embarrassing moment is? Would I want them to know my most ardent dreams, my dream vacation? Or is this someone that I really want to close myself off from? It's a good litmus test to be able to look at how we feel about our relationships in general.
Yeah, I think it's the really vulnerable things, like would I want to share my fears? Would I want to share the things, that my most embarrassing moment, like, I'm thinking I'm an addict. It's like I did those things publicly. That's just like kind of hard to, but I think it's the fears. It's like, what is of concern to me would be more challenging. I'd rather be stoic and, all of that. So to be willing to go, I'm scared, is a vulnerable and scary part for me to share. So,
yeah.
Any questions? Anybody has any questions or comments on this? So I want to know, does the 9-year-old son still have the scowl? Is that?
He can. That's when people see me the most in him. He has a very serious concentration phase. He luckily too, he has remained sweeter and more open and friendly than I ever was at 9.
Good parenting.
So, what's that?
Good parenting.
I hope it has something to do with. I've tried. But yeah, he my 6-year-old really has it too, but he can scowl, but he makes up for it, and he just is a really goofy personality. So he gets people to figure out that he's open other ways. They've learned how to work around their face.
That's good. So, yeah. It's always fun because you've mentioned that before, and I don't remember ever perceiving that you scowled and were unapproachable. I always felt that you were reserved, and more, the quiet demeanor, but it wasn't, a scary scowl. So it's interesting that so many people have told you that specifically. So,
and I probably got as much feedback along those lines, and I think a lot of it has to do with the mood I'm in. That really, like, there's an energy that comes out of it too, and that's something I've really had to work on to get closer relationships, is to make sure that my energy when I'm open actually reads that I'm open. Yeah, there's a lot of easy ways that we allow ourselves to be misunderstood, and there can be, like, for me, there was a time where I really appreciated that people thought I was unapproachable. I thought that was a better way to live, so I didn't do anything to disabuse them of that notion. Yeah.
If I keep all of you out here, then I'm not going to get hurt. So
Yep. Yep.
I was thinking too when when you're talking about like knowing people. I think it's also paying attention. So I was doing the webinar with Dr. David Fawcett last Wednesday, and he mentioned his spouse and pasta, in kind of the same sentence, and his face lit up with both of them. And I said, clearly that's something that you love. And he even said, which did I smile bigger at? And I said, I'm taking the fifth on that one. But it's one of those things where just kind of paying attention and seeing what people's demeanor is, and like when I saw his face light, I would say, tell me more. There's easy ways to kind of delve into that, those areas as well. So
definitely.
So questions or comments about other things too. So
it doesn't have to be about love maps. We can talk about anything recovery, relationship.
So I'll take a moment and plug the drop-in group. So last night, on Sunday nights, there was a porn addiction drop-in group with Noah Church. And then there was a betrayed partner group with Angela Spearman. And then there was a men's sex and porn addiction group at 8 p.m. Pacific time with Forrest Benedict. So all of those happen on Sunday evening. And then this morning, there was a men's group with Joe Savidra. And then there's this, and then there's the live Q&A with Dr. Rob tonight at 5 p.m. Pacific time, where he just answers questions. So there's no educational, informational component to that. He's just there answering questions in the same format. So the drop-in group, you get to see each other if you choose to have your cameras on. So like John and I can see each other. Everybody gets to participate in that way. We design them to be moderated, to be safe spaces. So the female sex and love addict group, it's just females. The men's betrayed partner group is just males. The men's drop-in group is just men. Whatever the title of the particular group is, it's just for them. So, but lots of different opportunities throughout the week for connecting in a lot of different ways. And then the podcast that is Sex, Love, and Addiction, a couple weeks ago, it had like 143,000 unique downloads, and it's insane. It's insane. So it's probably over 150,000 now, but I don't know. But yeah, it's doing incredibly well, which is interesting. The point of it is that it's such great content, and John has done 2 of them on the series, and then but Dr. Rob has just a variety of different guests on the series, and it's interesting content. I've listened to all the ones except for mine. But and then Dr. David has another series. And again, interesting. His are for gay, bi, and transgender men. It's on sexual health and just a whole bunch of different things. One of them was kind of on the history of the culture. So I invite you. You can find all of those on sexandrelationshiphealing.com, and you can connect with them. So. Here's a question. So I am the adult child of an alcoholic, and I'm in fellowship for ACA, and already had a hard time opening up and getting close to people. Now my husband of 12 years and I are dealing with his betrayal by porn addiction, and all I want to do is close off to him even more. How can I open up and be vulnerable to the addict? Great question.
Yeah, very, very great question. I would reframe that a little bit, because right now, I think thinking about being open and vulnerable to the person that betrayed you probably feels like an impossible task. And depending on where you're at in the reconciliation process and his recovery and your recovery, that may not be a real safe option. Often with people in a similar situation, what I'll encourage them to look at is the ability to be open it's a skill set, it's flexibility. And I would look at where can I flex that muscle so that little bit of desire that I have worked on kindling to be open to other people, how can I work on keeping that alive anywhere? Because what we do in one relationship, we're able to do in other relationships if we choose. So, depending on the specific situation, if there has not been If they're, like, for example, if there's not been disclosure, or there's active secrets, or you know, your partner's not really in recovery, or making any changes, those are all reasons, I would say pretty good reasons to be closed. But you may look at, where else in my support group, who else can help me to stay open, where are my relationships rewarding, so that you can keep that joint flexible, so you can keep that muscle strong. I do think too, I just this morning I was in a session with a couple and another therapist. We were doing an impact session. This is where the betrayed partner gets to share the impact of their partner's addiction on them. And what this partner said over and over again is they wanted this quality, they wanted that quality, and they can't do it all the time. And that was actually very healing for this couple to be able to get that out in the open. What we do want is this. We don't have the ability to do it all the time right now. And when I talked with him after that session, just kind of debriefing a little bit, he said, I feel like I have a lot better idea of how I can help her to keep the parts of her that she wants to be open, because I know where she's willing now. And I just always told myself that she was going to be angry with me forever. So I would focus there. How can I open up and be vulnerable, period? And then look at if down the road, or if I'm seeing recovery signs from my addicted partner and I want to stay with them, how can I choose to exercise some of those skills in this relationship that's higher stakes and maybe has more pain?
Yeah, I 100% agree. And that betrayed partner group that I mentioned, there's one on Wednesday at 12:30, and I know some of the people that are in those groups are finding connections that they can connect with even offline. If you find somebody that really resonates, you guys can swap email addresses, and if it's safe, and and connect and have somebody that you mentioned ACA. You hopefully have developed some relationships in in that fellowship now that can be safe places, even if it's not, I can't tell them everything about what's going on for whatever reasons, even if you can share pieces. Dr. Rob talks often about you can't, it's very difficult to be support for each other early on. I couldn't. Sorry, my phone, Siri. So finding other support and safe places for you, is what you need to do, I think. And then, hopefully he finds that for himself. So he's got, people he can talk to. And then, if you're working with a qualified trained therapist, great, to navigate that. And yeah, you didn't mention, how long you're dealing with this. So I don't know how long, I don't know where he is on the recovery journey. I don't know, if he's discontinued the behavior. If he hasn't, then there's how can you trust when there's nothing to have trust with yet? So
I would also say there's shades of openness too. Especially if we've been hurt in some big ways, we may feel I'm either open or I'm closed, and there's nothing in between. But Tammy, you brought up a little earlier some of your initial impressions of me. I would say reserved is not the most open position, but it's also not completely closed.
Correct.
So even getting some of that vocabulary for yourself, I may be reserved with this person, not closed. I may be cautious with this person, not closed. And that can help you to embrace the parts of you that are open, that are curious, as well as honor the parts of you that are saying, don't go all in here. Because I think that's a big part of this too, is you have to be able to listen to your gut and trust it.
So this one says, it sounds so stupid to complain about, and I don't think anything's stupid. My husband's been looking at British tabloid websites behind my back to use as clickbait, mostly naked women, which is one of my boundaries. He told me that he thought clickbait was stupid and wouldn't look at it. I asked him directly in the recent past if he's looked at anything, and he said no, and he's been doing this on and off his work computer in incognito mode. He is sorry I found out, which is telling. I'm sorry you found out, but not sorry he broke my boundary. I feel conflicted. It seems stupid to be mad at, but I know that something will escalate his behavior. So
this would be another one of those positions. I think it's important to trust your gut here. I was working with another couple this morning, and we were talking about um, compromise. And one of like I showed the donut a couple of weeks ago, and I showed this to this couple, and one of them said, "Is there ever value in holding a bottom line?" And I said, "Absolutely, especially if it's, a feeling of yours or a belief of yours that is really important that your partner understands. Bottom lines are not a place for us to start a fight, but they're a place to say, I have feelings here that I can't put anywhere else. There's not flexibility on these feelings. And when it comes to betrayal, when it comes to a partner's sobriety, I'd say that's a really difficult place to be flexible, because you're the only one who can draw the line where betrayal is for you. And so I think it's important to be able to look at the fights that are worth having. And I say fight because there's going to be a disagreement, not because it has to escalate into screaming at each other. This could be one of those things where, one part of you may be looking at this and saying, well, maybe there's progress that he's sorry I found out, or, maybe there's progress that he says he's not going to do it anymore. But at the same time, there's this gut feeling that says, I don't know if this is changing, and I've been here before, and I'm tired, or I'm frustrated. Again, I would look at some more vocabulary around the word being mad or being happy. Those are really polarized. It may be, I'm really concerned about this. I'm watching this. I'm cautious here. I'm exhausted here. I'm exasperated. Some different vocabulary may help you to hold the feeling that you're having. A lot of times when I'll point out anger that I see, a lot of my clients have a hard time accepting that it's anger because it doesn't feel like rage to them. So this may not be something that you're enraged about, but it may be something you really hurt about. It may be, he said, I know it's something that will escalate his behavior. Sounds like you have very good reason to be concerned. So maybe find some additional words to describe how you feel right now, rather than just mad. Because that may be part of where the conflict comes from. Is it may not feel it. Mad may not capture all of the feelings that you're having.
Well, and I was thinking anger for me was a really good cover for hurt. I don't like being hurt, so I'd rather be angry. That's the power and whatever. But what I was thinking too was, and this is me, but I was thinking, I think I would feel hurt that he doesn't even care about my boundary. And so it would be easy for me to go to the anger because, I'm hurt that he doesn't care about breaking my boundary. So, and she said, I'm not so angry or mad. I feel worn out and numb. I'm on the effort stage. I get that.
Yeah. That to me, that captures a whole lot more. I'm so worn out by this dynamic. When you look at that, should you not be? And I think often we'll use the word mad to say, I'm so tired of this. I don't know how much longer I can keep doing this. Mad doesn't always capture it all, for sure.
Well, and the being numb or ambivalent or like just not caring anymore, it's like you're still more in the relationship if you're in the angry, like if you're in, and in the middle, it's kind of like whatever, so it's kind of like I'm stepping away from this. So it does show a distancing for you that you're able to just almost kind of just go, F it,
Yeah.
So one of the things, so I'm going to talk about this too. So if there is a male who needs help, that needs to get help getting a foundation of recovery, the Seeking Integrity Los Angeles program is a 14-day program just for men, intentionally small, high clinician to client ratio. Dr. Rob wrote the curriculum and he collaborated with Dr. David Fawcett. So it's for men with sex addiction, intimacy disorders, which I think is 100% of the men with sex addiction have intimacy disorders, but there could be somebody out there, but we say it that way, or with co-occurring sex addiction and chemical dependency, whether it's, alcohol, cannabis, stimulants, whatever form that takes. So, so if you want information on that, you can reach out to me, but otherwise on the website, seekingintegrity.com, there is some information about that program. But if you are a male or you have a loved one who is a male, it's gender separate, program that needs help, that please consider that. I have said to others, if I had a loved one that needed help, I'd want them to have the best shot at recovery. And, I really believe in that program. So anyway, other questions, comments?
We still have lots of time.
We do. So, and we want it to be valuable for you. John's got a lot of great information. So I've used the donut thing. I got to tell you, like you referred to that again. And I was like, I've used that, and had the mental image of that. That was they're all helpful, but some of them are just even more useful.
That has been such a good thing for me to realize that when it really comes to, because so natively I tend to scowl and I tend to be inflexible. That's just my default setting. It really reminds me that if I'm going to be inflexible, it better be something that's really important to me. It makes me do my homework. I have spent a lot of my life as the person who would have no as the default answer just because I could say no and really didn't give a lot of thought to it. So I really love that donut visual too, to think that I only get a handful of things that I can be inflexible on. So I better make sure that they count for me. And not only has it helped relationships, but it really helps that internal narrative around how I feel like the world needs to be or what I can and can't tolerate.
Yeah. And I think for me, it's like, what is my ultimate goal with this? It is saying no and digging in my heels going to provide that? Possibly. If it's setting a boundary that should not be broached, then yes,
Yep.
It is. But if my ultimate goal is to, navigate this relationship and, to do things a little differently than, me saying no all the time, or the opposite, to have it be so squiggly that I never say no and I lose myself, that would be, not good either. So
Definitely.
Well, if there's no questions, we'd love to answer more questions, but if there's not, we will wrap this one up, and
Okay.
I guess we will. So we'll see you next week. John will be gone the 22nd, so I'm going to update the calendar. That will be there won't be one. Oh, quick question. Okay, good. My husband is supposed to be working on empathy and repair, but all week he has responded with gaslighting, stonewalling, anger when I have shown emotion. I have set a boundary.
That's there could be a lot going on here. For me, if I were in your shoes, part of that boundary would include, I really want you to talk to your therapist about this. Yeah, there you go. There's a good, like, here's what I'm noticing. I'm going to disconnect until I feel like there's more warmth, more empathy here. The empathy centers of the brain in addiction are actually deteriorated. It's not just I don't want to, it's a physiologically can't. And it's a really, really hard muscle to exercise. And I don't say that to, let your spouse off the hook at all. But to recognize it takes a lot of targeted work. So this would be one of those instances where sometimes the really supportive thing could be, saying, I'd like you to check this out with your therapist. Could you talk to them about the following things? Or I'd like you to talk to your sponsor about this. Because oftentimes this moving to a softer, more empathetic place is going to trigger a lot of defenses for someone who's lived their entire life defended. But that's definitely a good boundary to have. It's to take some separate space, send the message that what's happening is not okay.
She adds, we're working on empathy exercises in Carol Sheet's book. And to go back to what John said, for addicts, it's really challenging to deal with emotions. And, I don't know how long he's been, in recovery or if it's a new process, but it's a lot, and it's so confusing and challenging, and we do it wrong a lot,
Mhm.
before we learn a little bit of, oh, that's what we're supposed to do. I mean, and going back to kind of your default is no. It's like, I can't. I'm pushing this away. I just can't deal with it, and
Yeah.
so I'm going to not be empathetic. I'm going to I'm going to shut you down because I can't even tolerate being in my own skin right now.
Yeah.
And like Jon, not making excuses for him in any way, shape, or form. So I love that you're setting boundaries. I'm sleeping in another room until he makes an effort. I think, and being, I'm going to sleep here, and, and please, clearly this is a challenge for you. Please take it to your therapist, take it to your sponsor, all of those things. I think that's 3 months since last discovery, and he's been lying to therapists and me for 3 years. Yeah. So that would be one of the guys that consider seeking integrity. That, that's like, when the current stuff isn't working, then having a higher level of care, is a path. So
Yeah.
other questions or comments? Oh, we've got a question. I've been working recovery for over a year. Yay. I keep
There you
returning
go.
to denial and closing my husband out. How can I learn the muscle of self-accountability? That's a great question.
Yeah, this reminds me of my own recovery path a bit. And I think the big turning point came for me when I recognized um, how different my quality of life was when I wasn't holding on to secrets, when I wasn't isolating. And it kind of, for me, became I had to open myself to the fact that life could feel better than I had always known. And part of that came from um, practicing accountability and really letting myself observe the results. If I had just practiced accountability and then continued to tell myself the story I'd always told myself about being open and vulnerable and accountable, nothing would have changed. I actually had to write down, had this conversation with this person. This is what I felt before I went in. This is what I felt immediately after. And then I'd have to circle back like every week on the entry a week before and to say, and this is how it's played out. I really had to relearn. I had to redraw the map, so to speak. So another way of looking at this is really, I think a lot of our tendency to not be accountable to ourselves is a very short-term strategy. And, adulthood and recovery came about the same time for me. And they taught me some of the same lessons, which was that short-term thinking tends to keep crisis going, and long-term thinking tends to build stability and resilience. So for me, another piece of exercising the muscle of self-accountability is I almost look at it as this account that's accumulating. If I can be accountable now, this will serve me in the future. Or accountability today is going to make accountability tomorrow even easier. That way of thinking comes from the Smart Recovery material. They talk about every urge you resist, the next one becomes easier to resist because you're building a new neural network. So I think part of it's the habit too, setting as it a daily goal. There was a time in my recovery where I had the goal to tell somebody the truth about what was going on for me every day. And some days, like, it was a big, hairy, scary truth. And other days it was like, I was bored at work today, and that was the truth. That's about all that happened. But I really had to exercise that muscle and to make it a daily exercise to tell one person the truth about what was going on for me. But I really like the focus here on the muscle of self-accountability. It is a skill. It has nothing to do with willpower. It has nothing to do with whether you actually have that ability or not. It's something that you'll build. So treat it just like any other muscle and exercise it. Find a lot of different ways that you enjoy exercising it, or that you recognize you're exercising it. And I would say any recovery skill you're going on, make it, or you're working on, make it the primary focus for a while, and really take the temperature before, during, and after. Let yourself really see how doing something different changes your life, how it feels.
And I think, I was just talking about, what is my ultimate goal for this? So, if my ultimate goal is that I'm going to live in this same chaos forever, I'm going to keep doing the same thing because that's how I'll stay there. So if I want things to be different, I have to be willing to do things differently too. So,
Yep.
So I too like I like that you recognize it's the muscle of self-accountability. And John, you talked about resiliency, and Dr. David Fawcett, one of his webinars was on resiliency, and he mentioned that you build resiliency, and that was a new concept for me, because I thought kids were either born with it, or they didn't have it. And so to be able to go, wait, I can make this different, I can learn to do this. And it may be like the 100-pound weakling, where I'm gonna do it, I'm lifting the 2-pound weights, that's all I can do right now. Well, it's going to get better, and I'm going to see progress. And so I think, like John said, be really mindful of like the circling back and going, okay, look, I was brave, I did that here, and it had a positive outcome. Or I was brave here, it didn't go as well as I'd hoped, but I could do it a little bit differently, whatever. Being willing to be vulnerable, and being willing to not do it perfectly, but to do it, is going to, I think, probably help you move forward in a different place. And even, like, I wonder if this is a pattern with other people in your life, not just your husband, because it's, like you were talking about, all of these things, like we talked about with one of the other people earlier. It's like, can you find someone that you can start with, because if I practice it here, I can replicate it here.
Yeah, this also brings to mind for me, I think one of the biggest reorienters for me in self-accountability and self-starting is, at the end of the day, I feel more proud of myself when I'm doing that. And that really, I think, has been the biggest motivator in making those kind of changes is, I'd say for the vast majority of my actions, I get the feeling afterward of, I'm proud of how I did that. And that's invaluable. I think about that all the time. Am I going to be proud of how I do this, or how do I do this in a way that I'll be proud of my actions later? And it changes the thinking. Instead of orienting to fear of somebody else or fear of pain, I really orient to feeling accomplished, feeling grateful, feeling proud of myself.
Well, and I like that it's the internal. I'm not getting accolades from outside, but I'm willing to look at my own and go, I handled that to the best of my ability in this moment. So, and I was thinking, well, when I was out, and even early recovery, I didn't handle things well. One of my favorite promises from the 12 steps is, you will intuitively know how to handle situations which used to baffle us. And I was so baffled, like, all the time, so to learn that and have that promise come true to me was amazing. So oh my gosh, I'm sorry, I'm gonna mute.
Any other questions? Oh, here we go. This came up in the chat. Are you seeing this one, Tammy? I don't know if Tammy can hear me.
I can hear you, but my phone is ringing nonstop. So even though I've turned it off, so should I be concerned if my husband refuses to put filters on the phone? I'll let you answer that one.
Okay, sounds good. Should I be concerned if my husband refuses to put filters on his phone, as he thinks he can do his recovery without that? He's admitted he thought he could stop for the past 20 years, but I've discovered porn 4 times through then. I think in this case, I would be less concerned about the filters on the phone, and more concerned with his feeling of, he thinks he can still do this alone. Because filters, for me, they're a symbol. They're a no trespassing sign. And I've had some clients do wonderfully putting filters up on the phone, because they're already committed to not trespassing. They already recognize that they need some extra help. As silly as it might sound, they need another layer of reminder not to look at porn on their phone. And so the clients who are successful with filters, they've already accepted that they need help from something outside of them. So for me, the more concerning thing here is, he's got a go-it-alone attitude and he's not succeeding. And I would consider a boundary, a talking boundary that's more like, hey, here's my concern. While I have confidence in your ability to do a lot of things, it seems like this one, whatever it is you try, it doesn't work long term, and I need it to work long term. I would really love it if you got some help outside of yourself on this. And you might recommend like some of these webinars, you might recommend some of these resources, give him some options to choose from. But for me, I think if you were to have a fight around filters on the phone, it would miss the entire point. And where he's, you know, he said over the past 20 years, he thought he could do this for 20 years. I've discovered porn 4 times on his phone. In the mind of an addict, that's success. That's that near miss effect. Well, it's only happened like once every 5 years. So I'm good. You know, I think turning it a lot more over, to him to say, this isn't working for me the way that you're doing this. And I don't think it's working for you either. One of the things that I would like to see from you is filters on your phone, but more than that, I would like to see that you're recognizing that what you've been doing only gets you so far. What you know to do only gets you so far. And that's a big reorientation for a lot of folks who get into recovery, where they start understanding that asking for help is not an admission of weakness. It's actually utilizing abundant resources around you, people who are willing to support you, love you, help you, teach you, that kind of stuff. So that's how I would answer that one. Don't set up the fight around the filter. Set up if there's got to be a fight, have it be around that feeling of he thinks he can do it on his own, and lovingly invite him to see what's out there that's so willing to help him and so accessible. Again, like what Dr. Rob and the team are doing here on sexandrelationshiphealing.com.
Yeah, and I agree. And if you haven't read Out of the Doghouse yet, I'd encourage you to read that. But it's about rebuilding trust. And if he wants to rebuild trust in the relationship, you know, with you, then, you know, there are things that he needs to do in order to provide safety for you. So if you both join Dr. Rob tonight, you can ask the question. He can ask the question about filters, but it is more, in my opinion, like Jon, like it's more of the comprehensive problem. It's not just about the filters. But, you know, I've told a bunch of people, like, my best efforts got me into a 12-step program, you know, so doing it on my own was how I got to the program, you know, and there was no way I'd ever be able to get myself back out.
Yeah.
So there's a question. I used to try and get needs met for my husband. A basic need was to have conversations. He would not only refuse to talk to me, but he would pick fights, come home late, get defensive, tell me that I'm intruding on his personal life. Questions like, how was your day? We would visit friends and he would have great conversations. I would get angry, jealous, and confused. I gave up because of the hurt and pain it caused to have simple conversations. After I gave up, he would then, out of the blue, start trying to have conversations. I would try and engage, only to have the conversation go bad. He now tries to make me feel guilty for a lot of things I wanted. He destroyed, so I don't do, and now he wants again.
To me, it sounds like when you stopped having those conversations, stopped going there, you learned your lesson. You know, unfortunately, sometimes someone's main motivation to engage in a relationship is to feel power and to gain power. And that's when we tend to set up impossible situations, no-win situations. It's not really about getting what we want. It's about ending up the winner. And that's, if I were in your shoes, I would have a really difficult time wanting to connect again based on the history and based on how impossible it feels. You know, so I would say in situations like this, trust your gut. It's telling you something really valuable. And until your gut tells you a different story, there's probably not a lot that's going to be different.
But, you know, I used to try to get my needs met for my husband. So, you know, it sounds like you found other pathways to have conversations with other people and connect with other people. You know, we talk, you know, betrayed partners. We said it earlier too, to someone else. It's like, you know, finding support and where you can get it, you know, where it isn't, you know, a fight or a power situation or whatever,
Yeah.
but where it's genuine support, you know, like I want to be in a relationship with people who want to be in a relationship with me, you know, I don't need, you know, the hassle. I don't need to try to have a conversation with somebody who doesn't want to talk to me, you know.
If I were to try re-engagement in a situation like this, I would want to make sure that that I personally was not coming from a place of desperation, that I didn't have a lot invested in the outcome of this, that it would be more one of those, I'm willing to see where this goes, but I'm not too hopeful. And I don't need this to succeed. I don't have all my eggs in this basket because I am getting my needs met elsewhere, like you're talking about, Tammy. I think when there's been so much damage in the past, our risk of rejection needs to be very, very low when it comes to re-engaging in that relationship. And one of the ways that we really lessen that risk is we make sure that we have safe places to land that aren't dependent on our partner who's hurt us so deeply before. Yeah.
But I have to say, it's sad to me. It's sad to me that somebody would choose, porn and online whatever over having, a conversation and with somebody that they love enough to be in a relationship with on
Yeah.
some. It's a reminder to me of how addiction hijacks and it steals the ability to be really in an attached relationship, which goes back to I don't know any sex addicts who that don't struggle with intimacy disorders. So
Yeah.
there could be somebody out there. I just don't know about it. So
It would be the exception to the rule.
yes, there'll be a case written about it. So
Right.
Okay, we are out of time. So thank you all for contributing. It's so much more interesting when you guys ask questions and have comments. So we appreciate that.
Absolutely.
So Jon, great job as always. Always appreciate the practical tips and tools that we can use in our relationships to make them rockin' relationships. So
yeah, thank you, everybody.
See you
I look forward to next week.
Bye.
Bye.